College Football Playoff Committee has met, and they've decided. And Florida State is your third seed. They're playing in the Rose Bowl against number 2 Oregon, and we'll have it right here on WOCA January 1st, 5 o'clock kickoff. So join us for Florida State football as they take part in the first ever College Football Playoffs right here on WOCA, The Source. Seminole football is proudly brought to you by Culligan of North Florida.
The 5 reasons you should shop at Honey Baked Ham this Christmas.
1. Handcrafted, not mass-produced. No one can resist sweet, crunchy glazed ham.
2. Home-style sides that are as tempting as they are easy.
3. Honey-baked desserts, sweet, yummy, and oh so good.
4. Holiday platters for easy entertaining for family or friends or employees.
5. Gourmet condiments to treat anybody's taste buds.
So why choose anything else? I can't think of a single reason.
Honey-baked ham, the world's best ham. So get ready to pass your plate.
Happy holidays from Honey Baked Ham.
Located right behind Best Buy, 861-0011.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA. Ocala.
All right, 23 minutes before 10 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in this morning. Robin, we speak to a lot of authors. Most of the authors send us books. Yep. Once in a while, we'll get an audio book. And I remember I drove down to see my brother in Sarasota. What is that, like a 3-4 hour drive? I can't remember.
About 4 hours.
And I actually listened to, part of a book, a big part of a book. And it made the ride. I just enjoyed it so much. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying anything new. Many of you have done this. If you have gone on a long ride, especially if you're all by yourself, you will listen to, if you've ever done this, it's better than radio. I hate to say it, but it is. Mm-hmm. because you get involved in a story. If it's a good story, what could be better than that? Well, because most audiobooks are one reader, Yes. What about an audio production that is more like an audio play, like old radio would have been? Mm-hmm. Bill Heid is on the phone. He's the executive producer of something called In Freedom's Cause, the real story of Scottish hero William Wallace and his quest for Scotland's freedom. This is something I would love to be listening to. It's described as Disney-like in its production features. There's an all-star cast. Let me see if I can get these names out. Skandar Keys, who played Edmund in the Chronicles of Narnia series. Billy Boyd, who played Pippin from Lord of the Rings. James Cosmo, who played Campbell, Father Christmas of Braveheart, also the Chronicles of Narnia. Mm-hmm. And Joanne Froggatt, who played Anna Bates of Downton Abbey. And there's a lot more. This is a little bit faded copy that I'm looking at right here.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening to the printer, but
yeah.
Bill Heid, I am so looking forward to speaking to Bill about this. Good morning, Bill. First thing, how am I doing with your name? Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
You are. Good morning, guys. It's great to be with you. You're pronouncing it correctly, and we have Ocala-like weather up here in northern Illinois, oddly enough. So I kind of feel like we're on the same page there. It's no snow. Father Christmas is a long ways away, as James Cosmo probably would agree.
Oh, wow. That's nice to know. Northern Illinois, that sounds like a nice place to be, though, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Robin is from Wisconsin, so that's kind of close, isn't it?
Yep. It's 80 miles from Milwaukee, yeah.
80 miles.
That far.
Yeah, Robin is from Milwaukee. So tell me about, is this something new for you? And am I understanding this right? Gosh, I have so many questions. Where do I start? Are these on CDs? Is this a CD thing or a downloadable thing? How do you do this?
It's downloadable, and it's also on 2 CDs. Our website, infreedomscause.com. Folks can go there and look at it. A lot of free stuff, but you can figure out all the options there. There's a lot of different ways to get it, but it's a beautiful 2 CD set that comes in the mail if you order it that way. If you want to download it, then you're just going to be listening to it, which is cool too. But this is we love audio drama, and we kind of have this idea that kids today, maybe families together, are kind of pushing the threshold with respect to screen time. The average child gets 55 hours of screen time a week, I'm told, by professional people that monitor such things. And we decided, hey, what would it be like to do this old-time radio? Like, I remember listening to stuff my dad liked, that with the Lone Ranger and Green Hornet, a lot of that stuff, The Shadow, when I was younger. And we wanted to make something, take technology that's changed so much, guys, and then turn that into a beautiful story. So this is just like a movie. And this is not something read where someone's reading in a monotone voice a story. This is a movie. You just can't see this movie other than in the theater of your mind, and we like to think that's the richest way to view something.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this. I almost said see this. And I know it's made for children, but I know me, so I'll probably enjoy it anyway. But when you say it's made for children, is it made in a childlike way?
No, not much at all. I can think that one of the pattern for our stories we take from G.A. Henty, a Victorian writer who lived, in England and wrote stories for young boys and girls back during his day. He was a personal friend of Florence Nightingale's, by the way, just to kind of put you in a frame of reference.
Yeah.
Wow.
And and he wrote stories. He wrote over 120 stories for young boys and girls to read, and they were adventure-driven because life as a Victorian was kind of, remember, the sun never sets on that empire. So they were, like, everything was big and full of adventure and sunshine and surf and wind and all of these things. But he just loved, especially military history, so he would take you to places using a couple boys and a girl usually as a vehicle, but he would take you to all the great campaigns, whether it was Napoleon or just other people. He just covers all this amazing history, but he makes it fun. And the story that we chose this year, last year we did Sir Francis Drake. This year we did In Freedom's Cause. This was, so there's not very many people know about Drake, and Drake's an exciting character as well. There'd be no United States if it wasn't for Sir Francis Drake, because the Pope had given North America to the Spanish, and he almost single-handedly, guys, cut off the Spanish from our country by defeating the Armada. And so you have then English colonization in Florida at Augustine, Florida, and then later at Jamestown and other places. Drake actually helped start the colonies in Florida.
See, now I got to catch up on my education. Some people learn visually. They say videos will teach, and I guess that's true for me. Reading will teach. I guess that's true for me also. But for some reason, listening, which is probably why I got into radio, for some reason, listening to things, especially when they're told in story form, always remain with me. That's the word I want. Remain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that to us, that listening really does something. And the reason that I think that it does that, it's so profound, is when, if you watch a story on TV or a movie theater, all the heavy lifting that the imagination would do normally is done for you. So when you listen to something, or even if you read a book, but when you listen to something, your brain has to do some work saying, what's that like if a cannonball goes whizzing past my head? How do I process that? And we know now, guys, there's even some chemicals that get released when a child or even an adult is engaged in a story, one called oxytocin, that gets released, and it makes you more engaged. So it's hilarious. It's kind of describing what you feel when you're engaged in a story. It will help your memory. It will help you retain it. It will help you get excited and engaged about it. So the caveat, of course, is it has to be exciting and engaging. And then there's a kind of a loop, a chemical loop that exists in the brain where it just builds on that. So that's what we're trying to harness the power of.
I love that.
I'm very excited.
I went to the website as you were talking, and Glenn Beck is endorsing it as well as other people. I only single out Glenn Beck because he does a show here on WOCA every day. We one of his affiliates.
Yes.
Bill, I want to keep talking about this, but we do need to take a little break, so we'll put this on hold just for a second. We'll be right back. The audio story, which is a double CD set or downloadable, is called In Freedom's Cause. We'll be right back with Bill Heid after this.
The weather is brought to you by myfwc.com. Safe boating is no accident. It'll be partly sunny today and warmer this afternoon with a high of 72 to 76. Tonight, partly cloudy with a low in the low to mid-50s inland, mid-60s at the coast. Partly sunny tomorrow, just a slight chance of a shower, the high 77 to 81. And on Sunday, clouds and sun, a warm high 80 to 84. From the Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
This weather brought to you by Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association, FTBOA.
Did you know that thoroughbred horses annually contribute $1 billion to the Sunshine State's economy and employ over 12,000 people, more than even baseball spring training? To learn more about the horse capital of the world or to join the membership of the FTBOA, the Florida Thoroughbred Breeders and Owners Association, please check out ftboa.com.
Do you have areas that have started sagging or drooping? Is what you're looking at not quite the same as it was years ago? Are there enhancements you've been putting off? Is there serious damage you need fixed? Then call on us, Damage Control Services, when your roof is sagging and the drywall is drooping after a storm, or your home just needs some enhancements. From damage repairs to new construction, Damage Control Services is here to help.
All right, it's 9:46, and we are speaking to Bill Heid in northern Illinois, where the weather is just like ours right here.
Yay!
Where it's beautiful and sunny, and I can't try to rub it in that he needs to come to Florida.
Yeah. Larry, I got to tell you this. So you can mistake things up here because people start shedding their clothing when it's 50 degrees. So if you see people they've got shorts on, they're used to 20 below, and it's 50. They think that it's 70. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy there, but you get the idea.
Do you know what I was thinking during the break? I was looking at the website during the break, and I didn't realize this until during the break, that you have a composer who created a score. So this is really like listening to a movie.
It really is. John Campbell, who's very famous in a lot of circles, did the original composition for this, a musical score for this, and he also did a score for our first one under Drake's flag, as I said, about Sir Francis Drake. But we wanted to make these big, epic, just like a movie. But as I said before the break, we wanted children and adults to process these stories in their minds, so their imagination had to come up with something. And I wanted to tell you a quick story about Glenn Beck. I know you guys, some of your listeners maybe listen to Glenn's show. I was in Glenn's office talking to him about it last year, talking to him about Under Drake's Flag. And he was telling me he was listening to this. So you can listen to this in your car, but you can also, if you want to listen to this with your kids at home, you'll get engaged with the story as well. But Glenn was engaged, and he was listening to the story with his son, Rafe. And at one point in one of the action scenes, Rafe said to him, stop the player. Glenn's like, what? He thought at first that maybe Rafe was bored with it or something, wants something else. He goes, I got to go get a piece of paper. I want to draw you a picture of what Francis Drake looks like.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Now, that tells you exactly what, and I got goosebumps when he told me that, but he did, not necessarily because it came from Glenn Beck, but just because it came from a real human being who was
right.
spending some time with his kids or his son, and his son did exactly what an executive producer of an audio drama would want. Hey, I want to let my imagination describe what this is. And here's this picture of who Sir Francis Drake is. And so Glenn's got a picture of Sir Francis Drake done by his son. That's the goal, as George Bush would say, maybe not rightfully, mission accomplished. Right?
So now, the question I have is, did his son look up the picture? Did he know it from school, or did he hear the description of what he looked like and make an image based on the description?
Yeah, he was just listening to it, and I think, like a lot of folks, Sir Francis Drake is one of those guys that we don't really think about as being a great American hero, and in the show, we try to show you how he is, and how the fact that you wouldn't have the United States, it wouldn't be for Drake, because this would look and feel pretty much probably like Mexico. Like Mexico, can you imagine? This country being like Mexico politically and so forth. But so not very many people know these little parts of history. So there's a hidden agenda on my part, the deep dark recesses of my mind. I'd like to teach people about history, and the kids don't have to know they're learning anything. They just
Bill, in Freedom's Cause is a story about William Wallace, right?
Yes, the great William Wallace that Mel Gibson told us about Braveheart.
Okay, and that's where I wanted to go with this. Robin was pointing out that Braveheart is not as accurate as this. This is more accurate. Is that right?
Well, I think Braveheart, number one, I think Braveheart is a great movie. But here's what happened when we did a little research on Wallace and kind of found out who he was as a human being. We found out one thing that was really interesting. We found out that he grew up. His uncle was a priest. He went to a Christian school. He was taught Latin. So in Braveheart, you've got a guy that's kind of a barbarian, a guy that would paint his face blue and with totally fearless would charge any opponent.
Uh-huh.
First, they didn't really paint their faces blue during that period of time.
Oh, okay,
but,
okay.
my guess is Wallace really was the kind of leader that our friend Mel Gibson would have portrayed. However, what we found on the other side was he was a man of deep faith and deep convictions. He had been given a psalter by his uncle, who was a priest, and he'd read this psalter his whole life, and it was such a part of his life towards the end when he was captured by the king, he was betrayed by a friend, Menteith, and he was then turned over to Longshanks. They took him to London, and they had 4 horses, one tied up to each limb of his body, and they were getting ready to pull him into 4 parts.
Oh, wow.
And, ouch is what we say. He said, can I have one last request? And they said, yes. And he said, can I be reading my Bible as you pull me into 4 pieces? And they said, sure. So they gave him a Bible, and they put that in front of his face. I think one of the priests in London put that in front of his face, and he was reading his Bible as he was being pulled into 4 parts. Plus, we found out he was a bit of an intellectual. He spoke 4 or 5 languages. He as I said, he wrote in Latin, and he was able to write, as an ambassador, he was able to write political letters, an appeal to the Pope for a kind of transcendent freedom, and he was very much involved in economic affairs and trade and so forth. So this wasn't just a kind of a brute. This was an intellectual, a man every bit as large intellectually as he did physically.
Wow.
And his courage was amazing in a lot of different parts of his life.
So that's how he died, huh? He got pulled apart?
He did. And then the Longshanks sent those pieces of his body to different towns in Scotland and had them put on public display. We know this because each one of the sheriffs, he had to send out a bit of a warrant. And in the archives in England, all 4 sheriffs that took these 4 parts of him back into Scotland had a written warrant to do that from the king. And those are in the archives in English history.
Wow.
So you have to piece a little bit of this story together because there's not a lot of history. It was a lot easier to do for Sir Francis Drake because people were keeping a lot of records during that period of time. But if you did in the late 13th century, there was some things that happened and some things where it was kind of fuzzy. So it's like a puzzle that has to be put together a little bit, but it sure is a lot of fun.
What's nice about your projects is that you don't shy away from Christianity, that that people believe what they believe, and you make sure that it's in the forefront, just like Chronicles of Narnia, and then you have the actor that was in that one.
Sure, and we're kind of excited about being able to. I think the left, and I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, but I think it's probably because of conservatives and Christians have kind of just not put up much of a fight. So I always blame, myself or whatever. I never like to really blame other people too much because I think Christians just stood by and said, yeah, go ahead and take any references to Christianity out of our textbooks, our stories, whatever. And what we like to do is put Christ back. If someone had faith, we're going to put that faith back. Now, what I don't like to do is use hagiography. I don't like to put in things that were maybe just kind of lionizing someone or forcing kind of a cheesy Christianity upon a situation. I think none of us like that.
Yeah.
But if someone was a believer, so go back to Sir Francis Drake for a second. You may have heard of Fox's Book of Martyrs. Well, Drake read the Bible to his crew 3 times a day. He read Fox's Book of Martyrs to his crew members. He reminded me of George Washington so much. His ship would pull into a harbor, and of course no drunkenness and no brothels for his team. Yet when he wanted to go on another mission, it was not uncommon for him to have hundreds of people sign up to sail with Drake. But he had rules. He had lines of demarcation that he was very serious about enforcing. He would say, for example, hey, we're going to go try to circumnavigate the earth. We don't want God mad at us because we're living as if we don't have any faith. So here's another case where the guy was a man of
I love that.
faith.
I love that. Yeah. I'm always annoyed, I guess is a good word as any, when people seem to disconnect the desire for religious freedom and the building of this country, and the ones who wanted religious freedom were the Christians. That's who decided, let's go to someplace else and practice the religion we believe we should be practicing. And yet so many people want to disconnect that from our very roots. It doesn't make any sense to me.
No, it doesn't make any sense. And the Pilgrims, we're a month away from kind of celebrating Thanksgiving. They were the quintessential examples of people who, they just didn't come here. They were being persecuted. So that meant to the bishops and to the king's men at that time, because they didn't worship the same way. And I've been up to Scrooby and walked where the Pilgrims lived and walked in the Great North Road, and so I kind of know that story a little bit as well. They were having their ears cut off and their noses slit, and they were being tortured as well. So this was not a walk in the park for them to try to worship the way that they wanted to worship.
Wow.
And they came to this country just simply wanting to be able to worship, in a way that they found to be in the Bible, and it differed very much from the high church Anglicans at the time, and it just created a lot of trouble. But that, as you say, Larry, to flip that on its head and blame these people for being tyrants or something is the epitome of being absurd.
Yeah. It's almost like what the devil wants us to do. The devil wants to say, they didn't do anything. So I want to be sure the listeners know how to get these, because you've sold me on this idea. In Freedom's Cause is the new one. The one last year was called Under Drake's Flag.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yep.
And is this something you have more than two, or are you working on another? What are you doing?
I tell you what we're doing right now. We're actually working on two. We're working on one, which is a book that Lee wrote called With Lee in Virginia. And what Henty was trying to do with Lee in Virginia was not necessarily say that slavery was a non sequitur, but he said, was slavery at the time the only thing that was a factor? And of course it's a big factor, and slavery in my book, really as a kind of a Bible banger, slavery is punishable by man stealing is punishable by death if you look in the Old Testament. So no one's going to be advertising the idea that slavery may be a good thing. But what we're trying to say is, I wonder if states' rights was something that was the topic of conversation during that period of time.
Yeah.
I think it was. And so we're going to do one of my favorite characters, Robert E. Lee, and that's the project that we're working on right now. And later in the year, we want to do a story about King Alfred. King Alfred brought law to England and civilized England. So we're going to be doing two next year.
Bill, we have about 40 seconds left. Whoops! Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, you've held our attention. So how do we get these? I know how. I went to one website, but how do we get all of them?
Well, we've got separate websites because we've got so much dynamic content on each site. We've made it so underdrakesflag.com, underdrakesflag.com. Then go over to infreedomscause.com, infreedomscause.com, and there's a lot of content you can just check out. It won't cost you anything. If you want to go watch us in Scotland, you can do that, how we recorded it and everything. It'll be a lot of fun.
Bill, thank you so much. Fun interview. And call us if you need that repeated. We'll put it on Facebook when we put the interview on Facebook as well. Thank you, Bill. We've got to run. That was great.
Thank you so much, guys.
Major storm impacting the Rockies. Weather advisories also cover a swath of the Midwest.
The storm system that has already produced more than a foot of snow across portions of the Rockies will continue to move eastward over the next several days. By Saturday, we're expecting some snow across parts of the northern plains and upper Midwest.
Fox meteorologist Maria Molina. Higher elevations could receive up to 16 inches of new snow. Across Asia today, beachside memorials and religious services to mark the 10th anniversary of a tsunami that killed about 250,000 people, and paying their respects.
A fallen police officer will be laid to rest this weekend in New York City. A wake will be held this afternoon for NYPD officer Rafael Ramos. His funeral tomorrow.
Fox's Laura Ingle, Vice President Joe Biden expected to attend. Fox News, we report, you decide.
America was built by people with a few dollars and a dream. And while many don't know it, there's one path to success that still only requires a dream and about $10. That's right. If your dream is to start or grow your business, something as simple as the right business card could make all the difference. And today at Vistaprint.com, you can get 500 full-color business cards for only $9.99. That's right, only $9.